How was your day, George?
It was good. It was very productive, but it just got weird because I was out mowing my yard and I found out that the mayor of the town I live in a town of about 80 to 90,000 people. His son, 36 years old, died of a heart attack on Easter.
What?
And I
Oh,
kind of knew him. I didn't know him well, but I knew who he was. And I was with the mayor just a couple days ago. I was doing a couple stories with him, and apparently this guy was at church with his wife and two young children, and the mom and the two children left to go to an Easter egg hunt. He was supposed to meet him there, and they couldn't find him, so they went back to the church, and he was dead in his car.
Oh my gosh.
oh wow.
Yeah,
He's so young.
That's almost
36.
as bad.
Wow.
Oh wow. He's
I'm
younger than
sorry to
I
hear
am.
that.
Mhm.
Because I'm at 44.
Living
Yeah.
healthy.
Bad.
So I know not everybody on here was able to listen yet to our interview with Jeff. It was on the last episode of Break the Case, season 3, episode 5, that came out Friday. And so what we'll do is kind of do an overview of his interview and the main analysis and I guess conclusions that Jeff has come to in Linda's case. I got a sketch that I did of her injuries, and I'll put that up in a minute. And then we'll open it up after to like a Q&A. But one thing I wanted to tell everybody, especially those that are in the Port Orchard area, and I'll be posting this to the Facebook group, but we do have a presentation set up for, and I'm going to share my screen here, for when we're up there on April 29th. And I'm going to post the flyer in the group, and please feel free to download it and share it elsewhere. Because obviously we want as many people to attend as possible. We'll be talking about, how George and I met, how we formed this cold case team, kind of our overall methodology, and then, go through some of the cases we've worked, and obviously focus a lot on Linda's case. So anybody on here who's in the local area, we'd love to see you that Saturday. And we're also going to do a meet and greet later that afternoon at 5 o'clock at the Golden Grill on the Bay. And we picked that because it was one of Linda's favorite watering holes. So super casual, just come hang out, meet us in person. I got stickers and other swag to hand out. And it's just nice to connect with people in person. So I just want to show this flyer real quick. And like I said, I'll post it to the group so everybody can share it if they want to. And now let's see, I guess what I'll do, I'll stop sharing that. So I guess what we'll do, Jeff, I'll give a quick overview of what we know from Linda's autopsy. And then if you want to talk a little bit about your thoughts,
Okay.
and we can just kind of have a discussion,
All right.
But so Linda, based on the best we can tell, Linda was stabbed or slashed a total of 24 times. And I'll put the sketch up in a minute. So some of the wounds are actual, like the knife penetrating, into the body. Others are clear defensive wounds where the killer was probably, just lashing out, and she got cuts on her forearms and her hand. Jeff actually thinks Linda may have grabbed her own weapon or armed herself, and he'll explain why. 4 of Linda's wounds were considered lethal, meaning she would have died from any of those 4 without immediate medical attention. But even with immediate medical attention, there's a good chance she wouldn't have survived any of those 4. So in her case, there's what we call a high level of overkill, meaning the killer delivered a lot more stab wounds than was necessary to kill her. And that's something we're going to analyze in more detail down the road. And we're hoping to get former FBI profiler to come on and talk about the behavioral analysis. But in general, overkill is indicative of a high level of rage. And then that in turn is a high level, or is indicative of some kind of fight that went on between victim and perpetrator prior to their death. So I'm going to put up the sketch. And then, can everybody see that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So something that struck me and George right away is on Linda's front side in her chest area, you'll notice almost all the wounds are horizontal. And so we asked Jeff what his thought process was on why those ones are horizontal, because in my mind, I usually expect to see vertical wounds. So Jeff, what was your thinking on that?
Well, the possibility is that they have some martial arts knowledge or some medical knowledge to be able to understand that the knife has to go between the ribs horizontally rather than vertically. That way it won't get stuck in the ribs, and it can penetrate much deeper.
And is it common in a stabbing for the knife to get stuck in the rib cage? Like, is that something you've seen?
It is fairly common for a knife to get stuck in a bone.
Yeah. Okay. And I know there's one injury to her sternum, and the sternum, is over your heart, basically in the middle of your rib cage.
Right.
And you're thinking on that injury, what do you think happened when the knife hit her sternum?
I think it stopped immediately. And if there was much power behind that stab wound, that the knife, with the knife stopping so quickly, the hand could have slid up onto the blade. There was also an opportunity for the blade to break if it was going to, which I don't believe it did.
Okay. And so when someone has a lot of force holding a knife and they hit bone and it stops suddenly, what usually happens?
It's the hand slides forward onto the blade.
Yeah. So we definitely think that Linda's killer injured themselves. And it's kind of a call to action that we keep putting out there on our podcast episodes. But if anybody in the Port Orchard area who lived there in 2008, if you happen to remember anybody with this type of wound to the palm of their hand or the crease of their fingers, please reach out to us. Because I know Jeff said in the podcast episode that they may not have needed stitches, and it probably didn't scar for life, but I think you said it would have hindered them for like a week or two, right?
Yeah, it would have been very painful to do anything, especially using their dominant hand. They would have had a tough time to just go through normal daily work,
And then obviously would have been bleeding themselves after the attack. So
right.
Even if someone didn't see an injury, they might have noticed like blood in somebody's car that couldn't be cleaned out, or bloody clothing or something like that.
Right.
And if you guys look on the backside sketch, you see 3 large gashes, I'll call them, to Linda's right hand and wrist. So Jeff, what's your analysis on why she incurred those?
Well, I think all of the wounds on her right arm and hand, because she has some up in the bicep area too, were all where the attacker was trying to disarm her. I think she had something that she was trying to stab them with. They were hollowing out and making a cut straight down, and some of them hit right exactly on her hand, and some of them were higher up on her arm.
And so if Linda had some kind of weapon in her hand, your thinking is that that's where the attacker is going to focus first, because that's the biggest threat to them?
Exactly, right. And she might have gotten some strikes in too, so there could be some other injuries to the person.
Sure. Yeah,
as
sure.
Well, and that's what made them so hesitant about just going on in and attacking her straight on.
Do you have any opinion on the order of injuries?
I think, well, for example, the cut wounds that happened were just kind of incidental, and you can't really tell where they were. They were in the fight, so they were just slashing and trying to. That was in the midst of the fight. But I think probably the first significant wounds were on her right arm, where they were slashing to disarm her. Then once they disarmed her, I think the next wound is the one that goes upwards into the liver area.
Okay.
Because it goes into her liver and into her right lung.
Yep.
To the diaphragm. And so I think because that's a downward slash and then come right straight back up, it come right back up to there, and then they went into the left rib cage area.
Okay.
And probably the sternum stab was early
Okay.
too. It's hard
Uh-huh.
to tell.
Yeah, I know. I mean, it's only the killer knows, but I do
Yeah.
think there is some conclusions that can be made here. And I
Right.
forgot to clarify for everybody watching that the wound to the right side of Linda's head is not a stab wound. It's actually blunt force trauma. We don't know, for sure what her head got hit on, but the coroner did rule that injury as blunt force trauma. Either she got hit in the head with something, or during this fight, struggle, whatever, she got pushed into something maybe, or fell into something. And that's how she got that injury to the right side of her head. But aside from, well, that's not a stab wound anyways. So all the stab wounds are basically on her arms or torso.
Right. And I think you said that there was one to the base of her neck, on the back of her neck.
Yeah.
And
Um,
that was probably one of the very last ones.
yeah. So are you of the opinion that the ones to her back were, she was maybe not unconscious, but basically the killer got her under control by that point, or she was just
Yes.
struggling for air, probably because her lungs are collapsed, her heart is failing, and she's just not able to really fight back at that point?
Exactly. Right.
Okay.
And that may be where she ended up in the fetal position, and that just so that her back was to the attacker.
Yeah. And so what's your thought process on like Linda's position or stance compared to her killer? Like, do you think she was upright at some point during this fight, or do you think, because one theory, okay, so if you guys listened to the podcast episode Friday, you learned that Linda was completely nude when found. She had no
Yeah.
clothes on. So one theory obviously is that she was in bed asleep when this attack started. But would that be consistent with her injuries, with her laying down and being on a bed throughout this whole fight?
I don't think so, because I think somebody that's laying down, they would also get their legs into the fight, like kicking, because you can kick somebody further away and there would be slash wounds to the legs.
That's a good point.
As far as we know, there's no knife wounds to the legs.
No, there's not.
Yeah.
Okay. And so something that I thought of this weekend, and I was talking to Alan, our arson expert, and George about just another idea, since it makes sense that the injuries to her front side were in the beginning of this attack. Could she have like fallen to her knees and be facing her attacker still? Because
Yes.
by this point, she's struggling for air for sure.
Right.
Her heart is pierced. Could she have fallen to her knees and then the attacker like grabbed her hair, because she had long hair, and just kept plunging the knife into her chest while she's
Yes, I think one specific wound shows that most of her injuries are with the blade, the edge facing towards the outside of her body.
Okay.
But there's one where the edge is facing in.
Oh, okay.
And it goes down into the
Yeah.
chest. And so to do that with a knife with somebody standing up, you have to put your arm in a weird position.
Yeah.
To stab, and you have no power. But if you stab at her whenever she's down, like on her knees or whatever, it's perfectly natural and very powerful.
Okay.
Hey, Jeff, is it possible that the killer was behind her and had her by her hair and was coming down like this?
Yes. I can't see you, George, but
Let me turn my
in the
light
dark.
on. It got dark in like 2 minutes here.
Yeah, he'll show you. And I'll follow up with my next question after you guys discuss that.
I guess what I was saying, Jeff, is is it possible that the killer was behind her, had her hair, and was doing this, coming down on her chest from behind?
It is possible, yes. I think it could be like she could have her in front of her like this. It could that way, or to the side. She wouldn't have to necessarily be in front of her.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah.
For that one stab wound. Now the others, The others would be difficult to reach all the way around to get to, but those
Okay.
were while they were standing up.
I was wondering if the killer was behind her, why they wouldn't just slit her throat. And I'm sorry for the graphic,
Yeah.
conversation here, but we have to have it. Like, it's really important to try to figure out as much as we
Yeah.
can how this went down.
It is
So-
true.
Jennifer, I have a question real fast.
Yeah,
So is it possible that the killer could have broke into the house as an intentional, sexual assault or anything?
it's possible. We
And it
don't,
went wrong?
to me, this crime does not reek of premeditation. But we can't rule it out because we're just not far enough into it yet to really make a determination. I know it's happened where a potential rapist will kill their victim, but it's not that common. It's usually too much of a risk. And this person took an immense risk because they stabbed her way more times than she needed to be. They cut themselves, they're bleeding at the scene, then they go and set a fire, they have to find accelerant, something to light it with. I think it was something more personal, in my opinion.
Yeah,
George,
I
what is-
agree. I totally agree. And the thing about it is, if the person breaks into rape, like the Golden State Killer, he broke into many houses and he would threaten them with weapons and things like that. But he would threaten them, he would sexually assault them, and then he would kill them. He didn't do it on the front end because it's very rare that even a rapist wants to be mingled up in somebody's blood after they've, attacked them like that. It's kind of a rare phenomenon. Jeff, I had a question for you. In your opinion, what type of a knife, after examining the wounds, what type of a knife do you think could have been used to inflict them?
I think it was likely a kitchen knife of some sort, because there was one wound on there where the skin has pulled back because of the heat of the fire, and you can see the underlying muscle tissue is there's a very, very thin stab wound there, and so I think the knife is pretty thin and fairly small. It's about this size actually, as far as the blade goes. You can see it's about 4 inches or so, and maybe an inch wide.
I brought one too. This is a 4-inch kitchen knife. And something I wanted Jeff to talk about is a hilt, because yours has a hilt on it, but mine doesn't. A kitchen knife won't, right? So
Yeah,
if I'm stabbing and I slip, you can see my hand is going to go right down the blade.
It will. It definitely will. And especially if you've already got blood on it,
Yeah.
it will slide very easily. But what was your question? I think it was just basically about the hilt.
The hilt, yeah. Just explain what a hilt is and what it does and why you
Well,
don't think there was one.
This one has like a guard on both sides here. A kitchen knife doesn't have that. Also, a folding hunting knife doesn't generally have a very significant way to keep your hand from sliding down the blade. So it's possible it could be like a smaller hunting knife as well, folding hunting knife. But most stabs are caused by a kitchen knife anyway, just as overall.
That's statistically that most not.
Statistically, most of
Really?
them.
Oh, interesting.
That is interesting. I didn't know that.
I didn't know that.
It is.
To me, also, kitchen knife doesn't lend to premeditation in my mind, but
Right.
I know
No,
it's
it doesn't.
happened where someone just got pissed. I'm gonna go over there and show them, and they grab their own kitchen knife and go to the place. But
Exactly.
um,
The reason why is because there's just so many of them. They're everywhere.
yeah, exactly. And I know a lot of people have asked, did they find the knife? We don't know. We know that they processed the house really well for evidence. We know they collected a lot of things, but we don't know. We don't have the specific list of evidence collected, so we don't yet know if they recovered the knife. Most killers grab the weapon and run.
Right.
This person had to know that if they left that knife on scene, that's going to be pretty dangerous for them in terms of the investigation. But again, this probably happened after dark, and we don't know how much light was on, and if the,
Right.
the killer's cut and they put the knife down, or they're going to start a fire, like they could have forgot it. So there's a good chance, I think there's a decent chance police found it.
Also, if they remembered to get the weapon that Linda might have had.
Exactly. Yep.
Mhm.
Jesse.
Oh, hey, Jesse. He just muted himself back.
You're muted. There,
Does it matter whether the pinky was near the bolster or near the heel? Like changing the direction of the knife?
I think in this case, the index finger was forward. And that does matter as far as the stab wounds. If you have a knife with pinky towards the blade, it doesn't lend itself to as much slashing. And there was quite a few cut wounds. Like in Debbie's case, we saw only stab wounds. So that leads me to think that it was held more like this in an ice pick type grip.
yep.
And but in Linda's case, there were slash wounds, and the wounds that are on the arm would have been difficult to make with the arm this way, and the upward one into her liver.
Jeff, like just looking at the wounds, the wound pattern and the wounds themselves, is there any indication to you that the person who was inflicting these wounds, that they were sophisticated with a knife, that they had experience with a knife?
Yes, the wounds to the arm, trying to disarm her, are indicative of some kind of martial arts, like the Southeast Asia, Eskrima, Kali, Silat, those types of arts. They have specific moves, strategies called defang the snake, and slashes and passes and destructions of the arm are all in there. And that could lend a little bit towards the person having some martial arts skills.
So would you say that the killer was taller than her?
Possibly, but not necessarily. The one wound that I saw that would make it seem as if she was the killer was taller is that wound that we talked about where the edge of the blade was facing towards the sternum. That would have to either be done by a person that was taller than her or after she was down on the ground, like at least down on her knees.
Well, could it also be possible that this person was also somebody that she may have met when she was in the military?
It's possible, yes.
Yeah, we definitely can't rule that out because, I think
No.
George said it on the podcast episode, a lot of military, especially when they're overseas and you're looking for stuff to do, martial arts training is pretty common.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So, and Linda, Bremerton in the Port Orchard area, there's a huge Navy base there. So there's tons of military in the local area. So even if she hadn't served with the person or knew them well, there's lots of military there. And
Right.
so lots of potential people with that kind of training.
Yeah.
Jeff, do you think that they kept their grip on the knife the same through the whole attack? Like you're saying they're overhand, right? Like
Yeah.
you chop vegetables. Do you think they kept that
Right.
grip the whole time?
I think so, yes. Mostly because whenever you're in the midst of an intense encounter, tough fight like that, you don't change your grip until it's over, unless there's a specific reason for it.
Uh-huh.
Like if somebody grabs your hand, well, you can switch it to the other hand.
Sure.
Or if they injured their hand so bad, they could switch it to the other hand, or maybe switch it to a way that it doesn't hurt as bad. But as far as the wounds go, I think they were mostly done with the same grip.
Okay.
Hmm.
I think I
Jeff?
misspoke too. This is overhand? Or
I
or
think
chopping vegetables. I forget. I'm sorry.
like chopping vegetables. If you can
Yeah,
see me,
okay.
it's kind of like, it's like this.
Yeah, okay. That's
Some people
that's
chop
what I
with
meant, but I
strip,
think I said
but-
it wrong. And this is something I asked you in your interview, but how many cases have you worked where the victim was stabbed and found completely nude?
None, no.
And just to let everybody know, our arson expert said the same thing. In 30 years of investigating arsons, he has never been on a homicide scene that involved an arson where the victim was found nude. So I think that detail is really important for some reason. We're not positive yet what that reason is, but it just shows that both our experts have never encountered that situation. And so it's extremely rare.
Right.
What else,
Well,
George? Oh, go ahead.
about it. There was one other thing that I noticed on her back. There was a huge square bruise. You remember that
Yeah, I do.
in the photos? Well, since you said that she had a waterbed, and those are typically low to the ground and very heavy, so they have to be well made. I think that she probably got knocked down onto the waterbed corner.
Uh-huh. It's like a post or a pillar. I don't know exactly what you call it on the corner of the bed.
Right, yeah, the frame
That's a
post.
good idea. I didn't think about that, but you're probably right.
Yeah, I think that's probably where that came from. Because
Uh-huh.
most things in a house that are 4-inch square are, frame or structures, and they're at least railing high.
Sure.
So
That's a great point.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And that could be where her head, the blunt force trauma to her head came from too, if she fell, into the corner of that post or something.
right.
And that's another odd detail about this case. It involves a waterbed. She had a waterbed in her master bedroom. And that's another thing. Alan, our arson expert, I don't think has ever encountered that. We were actually talking earlier about, is there a way we can obtain a waterbed and like try to recreate the arson aspect to see what the waterbed mattress does? Because it's something that none of us are really sure on.
I have a
Well-
waterbed, but it's soft top and it's
Oh.
pretty far up. It's not
Oh,
one of those
really?
ones. Yeah.
Can
Yeah,
we
this
set
is
it on fire? I'm just kidding.
actually I have another one. It's out in the garage that isn't doing anything.
Oh, really? I might take you
Yeah.
up on that.
Well,
Yeah, can Alan set it on fire?
I know.
I would say in my misspent youth that I used to like build fires in the backyard, and I tested this theory and thought that I could put like a trash bag over the fire, fill it full of water, and then the fire would burn and put itself out. It didn't really work that way.
What
And
happened?
The reason why is the water is such a good heat sink that it boiled the water with a trash bag.
Interesting. I
Oh,
didn't think
wow.
of that.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So
Wow.
it actually
Okay.
didn't do what I thought it was going to do. I thought it would burn from the bottom and put the fire out, but it
Yeah.
actually boiled the water until it got low enough that the flames went over the top and burned the top, and then it fell.
Wow.
That is
Okay,
interesting.
That's instructive.
Yeah, because there's aspects to the crime scene that don't make sense to us, or it's hard to make sense of them, I guess is the best way to put it. And we're wondering if this dynamic with this big, basically water balloon in the middle of this room, if it's not having an impact on the scene in ways that we are unaware of.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, like you said, because we actually talked about this, Jennifer and I did today, about this boiling effect where the water may have been boiling and maybe she's laying on the bed and maybe it boils over, and, so maybe that'll help explain some of the stuff at the crime scene, some of the crime scene photos. Jeff, one thing I wanted to ask you, and this is going to be a really weird question. Because, there's a list of suspects in this case, or people they suspected or questioned or talked to. Obviously, none of them had any wounds to their hands
That we know.
that we know of. Now, is there a way, are you aware of any type of methods that you could use to disguise or hide a wound like that?
Well, the only thing that I could think of would be if they were wearing gloves, but it also could be that they may have been wearing gloves when they did the attack. That would protect their hand during the fight.
That's true.
So, I mean, there are specific gloves made to prevent cuts, but that's probably, they're kind of rare, but just leather glove would
Yeah.
be some protection.
It'd
Yeah,
be
and obviously being Washington State, people are more prone to just have gloves with them, period. It's just a colder place. I used to live in Oregon, so I know I
Right.
used to wear gloves way more when I lived in Oregon than when I obviously live in the South now. So
Yeah.
You know, another thing with the waterbed, you got to remember that they also have the heat underneath where the waterbed sits. If
Really?
she had the heat, yeah.
Oh.
Like in my bed right now, I have a queen and he has his to where he can plug in his heat. And I have mine where I can plug in my heat. But back then, it was just one big thing that would heat the whole waterbed.
that's
I
interesting.
didn't know they came with heaters. I
Yeah.
wonder-
Otherwise,
Yeah, they do. They
Oh.
do.
the water
Or
would
did.
suck the heat out of you.
Yeah, that's
Yep.
true. Oh. Is it,
Yep.
Dawn, is it one big like balloon compartment, or is the mattress sectioned off into
It's
different?
sectioned off. It's mine is one baffle and his is one baffle.
Okay.
And then, yeah, so it's like split, but together because they're, it's water.
Yeah.
Jen, I'll tell you this. Here's the thing. Hers is chambered like that, but there's other types of water beds that it is actually just a balloon. It's just
Is it?
one.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. And that's what I had growing up was a
Mhm.
water bed, and we had just one heater for the whole bed. It heated up.
It was
Or you
all
didn't
in
have
one
to plug in.
compartment.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay.
I think mine was that way too when I was a teenager.
Well, I met the woman who sold her the waterbed, but I didn't get her number. But she works at the Golden Grill, so we might be
Oh,
able to
good.
find out. We may be able to find out a little more information on this bed.
Yeah.
We are really curious about the dynamics of what happens to a waterbed mattress in a fire.
Yeah.
We're pretty sure, and Jeff just illustrated it with his story, but Alan and my father-in-law, who's also been in firefighting for a long time, both said the water inside is going to boil. But
Yeah.
neither one of them was really sure on then what? Will it split the mattress at some point? Will it stay well, the mattress was empty. So
Mhm.
one way or another, the water came out of that mattress.
Right.
Either the mattress got stabbed by the knife or the fire destroyed it or something. But it definitely didn't have water in it when investigators showed up or when firefighters were on scene. So
I wonder if it's possible that it just exploded.
I know, maybe
The
It
pressure
would,
just
just
shred.
it would be sealed.
Yeah, but I mean, if the pressure inside the compartment ever breached, like maybe a little bit of fire just opened up a hole and all the pressure went out that way and it just exploded.
Mhm.
Yeah. I think that's very possible.
Man, this is I hate to say it, but this is going to be interesting. We're probably going to have to find a water bed.
I know. Well, Kim
Or-
Schafer posted the comment. I don't know if you saw it. She's like, "We need a DIY Mythbusters."
Yeah.
Or if the bed was stabbed and the water ended up getting in that heater, that's another thing.
Electricity
Yep.
or electrocution, right?
Yep.
That's interesting too.
Mhm.
That's a good thought. Jesse has his hand up. He's so polite.
Oh.
You don't have to raise your hand, babe.
Yeah, dude. Jeff, do you think it's a fixed knife or a foldable knife? It kind of seems like the size that you're holding is like a skinny knife for like deer or elk, but like, what's your thoughts?
It's really hard to tell. I don't think it was a folder, like a slip joint folder or something like that doesn't lock, because that doesn't lend itself to stabs. But I think it was something about this size, probably a fixed blade kitchen knife. But it could have been like a like a buck 110, like a folder type
That's
knife.
exactly what I was thinking.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it could have been something like that because and something like that. It just has a slight bulge at the front of the handle, where that if you were to stab somebody, it would still definitely your hand would go past that.
Yeah, that little piece of brass isn't going to hold your fingers from getting cut.
Right.
And to be clear, you think the blade was just single edged, right?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
like for those who aren't familiar, like with a kitchen knife, the top is dull, you can't cut with it. So it's a single edged blade where only one side is sharpened. But in the
Right.
previous case Jeff helped us with, he's pretty sure it was a double edged blade. So that's what I want to ask. So
Yeah.
no matter what, this just had one sharpened edge. And did you see any sign of a serrated edge? Like
No.
the bumps you see on a bread knife?
No, they were very smooth cuts.
Okay. So smooth blade, one side sharpened.
Yeah, and it looked like it was fairly sharp too.
Okay.
Jeff, this is
So-
just an observation, but I've written 5 books, and you've got way more books in your office than I've got in mine.
I know, Jeff.
I've got
You
all
obviously
yours.
like to read.
I love his background. Actually, I love it.
I do too.
Yeah, I did a rough count other day, well, several months ago, and about 2,000 is what I got right now.
Good grief, man. That's awesome.
Wow.
Yeah, I kind of collect the books and knives.
Books and knives.
Well, we appreciate both.
For sure. I think I'm trying to remember if there's any other major things we covered on the podcast episode, but I think that's most of them, right, George? Is there anything else?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I guess we could just ask Jeff one like broad question. Jeff, in your mind, just looking at the wounds to the body, the positioning, where she was found, what is your theory as to how this attack went down?
Well, I think that was at least part of the fight was standing up. They were moving around quite dynamically, and at some point they knocked her down, and they got that one stab into the chest there, and then she either turtled up and got over where she was found, and she may have gotten there while they went to look for some gas or kerosene or whatever, and then they came back and saw that she moved and maybe did a couple more stabs to keep her, but something like that. It's tough to tell exactly, but I don't think that she was laying down during the worst part of the fight, because she would have got her legs in there and tried to kick the person away, especially after she got the knife taken away from her, and they would have done some wounds on her legs as well.
So Jeff, like those wounds to her, even her back, and like the one to the stem of her neck, it's possible that she was incapacitated even at that point, in your opinion, possibly?
Yeah, I think it's possible, yeah.
Okay.
Especially the one to the back of her neck. Jen said it was, I thought that on the autopsy, it said that most of the wounds were on the back were not really consequential, but since then it said that one wound right on her spine was probably a one that would have been fatal as well.
Yeah.
It may have been, yeah. The coroner thought so, but he's like, that was a tough one for him to tell.
Yeah.
How much
And back
damage
to-
it actually did to her spine.
Back to that bed, you got to remember back then they were free flow beds, which moved constantly. So if they were fighting on the bed, she's like moving everywhere because, like I said, the free flow
Yes.
Yeah.
is doing everything. It's moving with them.
I forgot about that. Yeah, those things would just like have like waves in them,
Yeah.
You'd be
Yeah,
popping up all over the place.
Yeah.
exactly.
Control your movements.
That might explain some of the interesting angles on some of the wounds too. I mean,
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah, and to fill people in. So one of the lethal wounds pierced Linda's right atrium of her heart. And it's a little ironic because our last case, the victim
Yeah.
had almost the exact same injury, just from a different angle. But Jeff last year found us a video of somebody else getting stabbed that way. And the guy had fight in him for, it was, we counted, it was like 12 or 14 seconds. And then
Yeah.
he just collapsed and he died.
Correct.
So
Right.
once she incurred that wound to her heart, she had like, say, we'll say conservatively 15, 20 seconds probably. And then she was not totally dead, but incapacitated. She wouldn't be able to function.
All right. Yeah, her blood pressure was too low to.
Yeah. Yeah. And Linda, she had like 2 pints of blood, I think, George, in her lungs. And everybody
Yeah.
knows like what a 2-liter soda bottle, you know, the big one, it's close to that. But there was a huge blood stain on the, like below her as well. So she bled out both ways, like into her lungs and then also out of her body.
Yeah, just for a frame of reference, 2 liters is roughly 40% of the blood in your body, which is
Yeah,
a
that's true.
lot of blood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think those are the main things, but I mean, obviously we're happy to answer questions. So if you have thoughts or ideas or you want to discuss something now, you know, please feel free to bring it up now. Or if we need to clarify something, we can obviously do that. And everybody's silent.
Well, the only thing that might came up to me and stuff like that is, you know, could it be possible that she may have went out partying or anything like that night and met somebody and they came back over to her place?
Well, here's something else peculiar about this case, because the list goes on and on. So I think everybody knows Linda was a drinker. She, I don't know, George, would you classify her as a functioning alcoholic? I mean, she held a job most of her life. She was in the military. I think she just liked to party at night.
Yeah.
She had no drugs or alcohol in her system. And they did recover her entire body. They have her blood. Assuming they tested the right blood, it's an accurate test. And so no one I've talked to that knew her can imagine her going out and not having some drinks. And she dabbled in some other drugs too, which whatever, but nothing showed up in the toxicology. So we don't tend to think she went out that night. But it's also another issue, like, of course, the ideas come up, did she have a date over, you know, and they were making dinner, hanging out, whatever. But again, everybody, including her family, is like, but she would drink. She would have been drinking. Like, nobody can figure out yet why she didn't have any drinks that night. But anyways, point being, there's no indicators that she went out. I mean, we've connected with a lot of people that knew her, and a lot of the locals, or the local people she knew and hung out at the local bars, and no one who was out that night so far that we've talked to saw her. So we can't totally rule out that she didn't go out, but it doesn't sound like she went out that night. She talked to a friend of hers approximately between 4 and 5 in the afternoon. There's reportedly another phone call around maybe 8 p.m., but we don't have confirmation of that. So we're not using that at this time as proof of life. But it appears that this attack went down after like 9 p.m. And that's the timeline is a big thing we're still trying to piece together.
Yeah, it's pretty wide right now. I mean,
it is.
I mean, there's some things in there that logically or best percentage wise indicate that it was probably much later in the night, but we don't know. Not yet.
And she had no food contents in her stomach either. She's about 5'3", 105 pounds. So her stomach on average, if she ate a full meal, say for dinner, would empty in like 3 to 5 hours, probably more like 4 to 5 hours. So when she's found at approximately 4 a.m., that tells us she hadn't eaten at least since midnight.
Yeah.
But if she'd had drank a decent amount, even before midnight, you would expect to still find some kind of alcohol level in her blood, and they didn't. So hopefully that makes sense. That was a really long answer to your question.
Nope, nope, nope.
But yeah, this is what's so great. I mean, like, I love you guys joining us because the brainstorming is what's going to bring new thoughts and ideas to this whole investigation. So keep them coming, and we'll just, keep discussing them. Anybody else have ideas? Kim? I know you followed this case pretty closely. All right, well, George, anything else?
I think that's it. Just plug that we're going to be there,
Yep.
again, Saturday,
Yep.
April 29th.
Yeah,
We got some stuff planned, and we really need to network hard that day with anybody who lives in the Port Orchard area, because we got to make connections. Jennifer, you and I have said this for many years now. People do not commit crimes like this and not tell somebody.
yep,
And so we need to find the person that they told, and
Yeah.
we need to get them to the Port Orchard police so that they can make an arrest.
yeah. And just learning more and more about our victim just helps, helps us
Yeah.
dissect the entire crime and the timeline and the injuries and everything else. So the more we can learn about Linda from people that knew her, the better. And so, we're available. I mean, we have some things scheduled that Friday, Saturday, Sunday, but like in general, we're available. Anybody wants to meet up in person. I know there's already been a couple that have reached out and definitely want to meet us in person, and we will do that. But if there's anybody else out there that wants to, please just shoot us a message and we'll make it happen. And you don't have to be known. We'll come meet you in a back alley or something if you want.
Well, maybe not a back alley, but we'll
Maybe
do it
not back
someplace
alley.
indiscreet. Yeah, when we start, hey, we'll have our knife expert on. I don't really like thinking about back alleys.
Take your knife, whatever you know.
Yeah.
No, I'm taking a gun. I'm not taking a knife, Jeff. Sorry.
That's
I'm not
okay.
skilled like you. I just
I
have to shoot.
understand.
For those who ordered t-shirts, which I'm wearing, this is not the one with Linda's info on it, but it's got my podcast logo. The order went in yesterday, so the t-shirts are being worked on. I know I've coordinated with some of Linda's family members and friends to I'll just bring your t-shirts for you to Washington. But everybody should have their t-shirts in a couple weeks. So I appreciate everybody who made an order, because that helps us raise the reward fund for Linda's case, because maybe $5,000 isn't enough, but maybe if we get it to $7,000, it will be enough for someone to come forward. So you just never know.
It is, Jennifer, it's shocking how little and people don't understand this, because I've been a journalist for a long time, how little amount of money you can pay someone to actually kill another person, and how little amount of money going from 5 to 7 doesn't seem like a big deal, but it's actually a huge deal. There's just, in certain people's minds, there's just a trigger, and you cross the threshold and they're like, okay, I got to say something. And we're
Yep.
fine with that. We'll give them $7,000. We don't care. I mean,
Yeah. And
that's
it's
what it
not,
takes.
it's from us, it's from our team's fund that we self-fund. So you don't have to pay taxes on it or write you a personal check. I'll never tell anybody your name. You don't, it's not like the police department or the FBI or somebody's posting this reward and whatnot. It's our own personal team thing that we do on every case. So
I'm sorry. I just joined in. I just started listening to you guys' podcast a couple of days ago. I go to the APU, and I'm a part of the criminal justice department. So, as far as the fund, is there a link or something that you have somewhere where you can go to for?
Like, you mean to donate?
Yes, to donate.
I can give you a link, yes, if you would like to do that. We do accept donations. We don't really solicit donations because we don't, just having everybody's brain involved in this is enough for us. But yeah, if you would like to donate, we would happily accept that. And I will write you a receipt. And on that, it states that in the event of Linda's case, we don't need to pay out the reward. I'll either refund you your money or we can pass it on to the next case that we work. So we do give that option for people that donate.
Okay, well, yeah, that would be fine if you could send that to me. And as far as giving back or receipt and all that, I don't need all that.
Oh,
It's just something I just want to do myself, you know.
Well, thank you very much.
We really, really appreciate that. Thank you. And I know
We
Linda
do.
does too. If you can, have we connected before, like on Facebook Messenger or anything?
I don't think so. I think the only person I've read was like Erica from out of the group, from out of the
Oh yeah, yeah.
criminology.
Yeah, I know,
But-
Erica. Shoot me a
right.
message if you don't mind.
Okay.
Just shoot me a message on Facebook and we'll connect and we'll figure it out.
Okay then. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. And thanks for going to my university, keeping me semi-employed. Yeah, so I know there's a couple of people that came in late. I'm going to share my screen one more time just so you know what I'm talking about. But when George and I are in town in Port Orchard in a couple of weeks, we're going to be giving a presentation at the Kitsap County Library at noon on that Saturday. And we'll be discussing like how George and I came together in this space, some of the cases we worked on, and obviously we're going to have a big section on Linda's case. Open to the public, it's free. Like we would love for anybody that's in the area to attend. And I'm going to post the flyer in the Facebook group. So if anybody feels like something that would help us actually, especially those that live in the area, if you would repost it to your social media or tell friends about it or whatever, that'd be great. And then on that same day, Saturday, we're going to have a meet and greet starting at 5 o'clock at the Golden Grill on the Bay. And we picked that restaurant bar because that's one of Linda's favorite places to hang out. It's super casual, just come hang out, have a beer, meet us in person, you know, chat with us about the case or whatever you want to chat about. We'll just be hanging out for a few hours there. So we'd love to meet anybody that wants to come out. Anything else? No? Jeff,
Well,
as always, thank you so
yeah.
much. What were you going to say, George?
Thank you.
I have some, we're not going to talk about it tonight, but I have something insane I got to talk to you about in another case that's been
Great.
yeah,
There's been enough insanity today, George. I don't know if I can handle any more.
that's why we're saving it for tomorrow.
Okay, got it. Well,
It's
thank you,
interesting, I'll
everyone.
tell you that.
Okay, oh, I know. Thanks, everyone that joined. We're going to have another one of these exactly 2 weeks from this evening with Alan, who's our arson expert. He has some amazing insight. Him and George will trade jabs, figuratively speaking.
Yeah, we've been doing it. We've been trading jabs for a very long time, which I complimented him today because he did some good work on this case, and I appreciate it. But yeah, we will definitely trade jabs.
Yeah, Alan, he is, correct me if I'm wrong, George, director of the fire science program at Black River.
Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah.
And he's actually been working with his students to do some recreation on Linda's case. And they're working on making us some videos that we can publicize. So hopefully we'll have those by the time we have our Zoom with him and we can talk through those. And Alan is he's a wealth of knowledge when it comes to fire. So if you're able to join in 2 weeks, we would appreciate it.
Yeah, he's kind of like Jeff. It's like they have an expertise in a certain area, but they've got so much experience in other areas that they're able to tie that stuff in.
Yep.
You know, for instance, like, you know, Jeff deciding to boil a bag full of water.
Yeah.
I mean, that just is unbelievable because Jennifer and I just a few hours ago were talking about that.
Yep.
So
I had to try it. I just thought of it one day and I was surprised.
I never would have imagined that would be the outcome ever.
yeah, I never had the thought never entered my head. I have to try that. So we appreciate it though. I'm glad you did.
I'm glad I had that pyromaniac little event back then.
By the way, those who are watching on YouTube who weren't here for the live version, I will post this video in Linda's group. Please feel free to write comments under the post or questions or whatever you might think of, and we'll be happy to answer and discuss. So, all right, if nobody has anything else, thank you guys for taking an hour out of your evening to join us.
All right. Thank you.
Take care, everybody. See you soon.
Awesome podcast.
Thank you.